Now for today's program. Nitzan Horowitz was a member of Israel's Knesset from 2009 to 2021, where he chaired the Education Committee and served on the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. He chaired the Meretz Party from 2019 to 2022. Nitzan served as Israel's Minister of Health and a member of the Security Cabinet until 2023. As a health minister, his central policy focus was promoting equality in access to Israel's healthcare system. Before entering politics, Nitzan was a leading journalist and documentary filmmaker specializing in international affairs. He serves as chief correspondent in Washington, D.C. and Paris for major Israeli news organizations. Nitzan is the author of Besieged, which chronicles the first hours of October 7th, and his latest book is Home on the Edge, which documents the evacuation of northern Israeli communities since October 7th. Natan Guttman is a Moment Institute Senior Fellow and author of Moment's bi-weekly newsletter, Jewish Politics and Power. A veteran journalist covering U.S.-Israeli relations, American politics, and the American Jewish community, Natan currently serves as chief U.S. correspondent for Israeli Public TV KAN. Prior to his position, he filled similar roles in Washington for Haaretz, the Jerusalem Post, and the Forward. Natan has also provided commentary on major news networks, including MSNBC, CNN, BBC, and NPR Radio. Please welcome Nitzan Horowitz and Natan Guttman.
Thanks, Suzanne, for the introduction. And it's great being here, and it's great being with Moment. And it's especially great being with Nitzan, who is not only all the things that you said in the introduction, but he's mainly a great friend. We've known each other since we're 18 or 19, I would say. We started off together in the Army radio. And since then, Nitzan went on to do great things, and I went on to do pretty much the same thing I was doing then. Um, and Nitzan is a true Renaissance man. He manages to traverse from politics to journalism to culture, and everything is seamless and everything works great. Little known fact is that he is also a very talented accordion player, but I'm not sure we'll get to that in this conversation. So, Nitzan, thanks so much for joining us. And before we start discussing and dissecting the situation in Israel, maybe just a word about the background that we're seeing behind you.
Well, first of all, Nathan, it's a pleasure being here with you. And thank you, Suzanne, for the introduction and the opportunity to meet. Nathan is a great friend and a great journalist, so it's a real pleasure. And I hope this conversation would be interesting. I'm sure it would. Well, the background is a picture of the northern border of Israel, where I live nowadays. The town, the village there is Kibbutz Hanita, really on the Israeli-Lebanese border, and so this kibbutz is the main issue of my new book, A House on the Edge, which tells the story of the evacuation of all the northern Israeli communities during this October 7th war. And so it's a special place. It's just a view that I see from my own balcony in another village nearby. And I love this area. I love the Galilee. And I hope that this border would be a peaceful one in the coming years. But we will discuss it.
Definitely, we'll get to that soon, but there's so much breaking news that we really have to start with Gaza. And I guess we're a few days into the ceasefire, into the agreement. There was a huge outburst of joy in Israel on Monday when the 20 living hostages came back. Now there's this suspenseful wait for the bodies of the hostages that are buried in Gaza. But from your vantage point, how do you see this? Is the war over or not? Or are we in a process that still might get derailed?
Well, this is the main question, the main issue. I think the war is over, as President Trump stated very clearly in Israel, in Egypt, in the US. The war is over. After more than 2 years, the war is over, and it's a great, huge relief for us Israelis, also for the Palestinians and for the entire region and maybe the world. It was a devastating war. It was the longest war in Israel's history, more than 2 years. And it was very difficult for all of us in the south, in the north, of course, for the Palestinians. But there is a big but about it. And the thing is that this war was ended by President Trump's declarations. I mean, there was no move or action by the Israeli government to end the war. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, most of the government ministers, the cabinet here in Israel would like to maybe continue the war, but Trump forced the end of the war, and this is where we are. He came here. It was a bold move, and I appreciated it a lot. I mean, he is very popular nowadays in Israel on both sides of the aisle because he succeeded in ending the war, bringing back the hostages. But since there is no agreement, and since this situation was sort of forced upon the Israeli government and on Hamas, well, there are many problems. How to implement it, what to do now, what to do next, who is going to control the Gaza Strip, who is going to replace Hamas. Hamas is still in power. They're killing now many people there. What should Israel do? All of those questions do not have any answers because the end of the war was not planned, was not prepared, and now they are debating what to do next, and it is a dangerous situation. It's a scary situation. There are a lot of unknowns, a lot of question marks, but one thing is certain: the war is over. There might be some people who would like to renew it, but I don't think it's possible nowadays. But what would replace the war? Is there going to be any arrangement? Who is going to discuss it? How? We do not know. So it's a very confusing situation at times.
Right. And one of the reasons I think that it's confusing is because of this, the way the agreement was structured as a two-phase deal. And the first phase is the one that it's easier for everyone to accept. Ceasefire, return of the hostages, opening Gaza for aid, and partial withdrawal of the Israeli military to a line which basically keeps Israel in control of about half of the Gaza Strip. But the second phase is the more difficult one. Of course, you have to set up an international force that will take over Gaza. You have to phase out the Israeli withdrawal and demilitarize or disarm Hamas. And all these things are very, right now, it's really unclear how they're going to happen. I'm wondering if you, from the liberal standpoint, you were a leader of a left-wing party in Israel. How pleased are you with this type of an agreement, which ends the war, brings relief to everyone, but doesn't really have a vision for resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, first of all, we're all, and I'm not just talking as a progressive politician or former politician or left wing, but as an Israeli, I'm sure that 99% of Israelis are happy with the return of the hostages, and maybe 90% are happy with ending the war. That must be said, and Trump should be thanked for that. And it was his own intervention that brought about the end of the war. And this is something that we really yearned for so long. So this is tremendous. Now, the next phase, as you emphasized, is the most difficult one because it involves the replacement of the Hamas regime in the Gaza Strip by something else. But what is this something else? Now, Netanyahu and his government avoided for so long even discussing the possibility of creating or promoting something that would replace Hamas as the governing entity in Gaza, because they didn't want to discuss with any other Palestinian representatives, and especially not with the Palestinian Authority headed by President Abu Mazen Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah. Now, I think if you as for my opinion, I think that, and it's not just my opinion, it is now the general view outside of Israel and by many Israelis that the only viable solution for Gaza now, after the end of the war, is the replacement of the Hamas regime by another Palestinian sort of administration with the involvement of the Palestinian Authority and, of course, the help of the international community. But the Palestinian Authority must be part of this arrangement. This is also the centerpiece of the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement orchestrated by the US, by Trump, but also by Egypt, by other regional players. So we're talking here about a new administration governing Gaza with the Palestinian Authority involved, maybe handling things. And this should lead, according to the Trump plan, to a discussion on a long-term solution, which is a Palestinian state on both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Now, this is of course not the opinion shared by the majority of Israelis. It's deeply contested here in Israel, but I think eventually people would realize that if we want a stable situation, we want security, we want to have peaceful relations in the region, well, the only way to go is the two-state solution and the creation of a Palestinian state. Of course, not with Hamas, but with other Palestinian elements, primarily the Palestinian Authority.
Do you see a situation in which Netanyahu or parts of his government will try to derail the plan, or at least the second phase of it, where after hostages are back and hopefully all the bodies of the missing Israelis will be returned, and it will settle into some kind of a new status quo in Gaza, in which Israel still controls part of the area, but there's more aid coming in a way allowing both sides to avoid the difficult decisions regarding the second phase. Could that happen?
It is very possible. It is possible. It is possible. It's not a likely situation, but and it's not desirable. But it is possible. First of all, already, Natan, you have some Israeli ministers like Smotrich, Ben Gvir, extreme right-wing parties that clearly state that the war should be resumed because Israel did not end the Hamas, did not destroy the Hamas. And these people, they don't hide their aspirations to occupy the entire Gaza Strip, to deport the Palestinian population, and to build Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip. Now, this is off the table with the Trump plan, but these people are part of the government still, and they are saying those things, okay? So this is one thing. The second is the fact that, and now we're entering into some political issues. The war is just part of the picture, or the end of the war, or the post-war situation. We have a political crisis in Israel that started long before the war. This is now in place a very extreme government in Israel, the most extreme right-wing government that we had since independence. And this government created a very sharp political conflict inside the country. And so this situation is not resolved by the end of the war. On the contrary, since now the war is over, the intern conflicts are getting back, are coming back again, and this is what we're witnessing in the last couple of days. And I think it will be stronger in the near future. Okay, so we're talking here about a situation that if Netanyahu implements the Trump plan, meaning discussing the creation of a new Palestinian administration in the Gaza Strip, he may lose his parliamentary majority, he may lose his government, and we're heading for early elections. Now, with this in front of us, then we have many possibilities and many opportunities, but this is the main point. Beside the war in Gaza, we have an internal political crisis in Israel. So these are two things, the war in Gaza and what to do with the Gaza Strip, and what to do with the Netanyahu government if he loses the support of the extreme right wing because of the changing situation in Gaza and the Palestinians. So these are two major issues.
Right, and that's a very interesting point, I think. Maybe just before we continue, we should remind our viewers that you can, we'll have time for questions at the end. You can write up your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them later on. But I would want to just keep on this on the issue of Israeli politics for a second. Netanyahu obviously lost a lot of support since the war started. He's widely seen as responsible for the military, the intelligence, the civil society, the government fiasco that allowed this to happen, and for the lack of treatment afterwards. And he lost his standing in the polls isn't as strong as it was before. But from your view, both as an insider and as someone who is looking from the outside, do you think that this changes the political calculus in Israel? We're heading to elections, either early elections or on time in October. Did Netanyahu gain from this move, or did it weaken him? Or how do you see the prospects? And maybe also a word about who is out there challenging him right now.
Well, in the days following the October 7th attack and the failure by the military and the intelligence services and all the catastrophe that happened then, we were all shook, all of us, including the entourage, the people around Netanyahu, that he's done. I mean, he's over, and that he would not survive the pressure. But he's a very very shrewd and skillful politician, and the opposition was quite weak during the last 2 years, and he survived. It's not only that he survived politically and he consolidated his political majority, his parliamentary majority, his coalition. He also he regained some popularity that he lost after October 7th. The attacks in Iran, in Lebanon, maybe the end of the war, it helped him politically. Okay, it helped him politically. Now, still, according to the opinion polls, if the elections are held today, he would lose. Okay, he would not be Israel's next prime minister.
But lose to whom?
Yeah, that's another question. He would lose probably to a wide array of parties ranging from right to left, parties that are against him, to put it simply. Okay. Now this is weakness because the opposition is fragmented, unlike his consolidated majority for now. So this is something that we should think about talking about Israeli politics. But he's not in his strongest position. Okay, now it's he for a moment, when the hostages were freed and he was supposed to attend the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, and the Indonesian president was supposed to visit Israel. And so there were people saying that he is changing orientation, that he is abandoning the right wing, the extreme right wing, the settlers, and he is going to the political center. And now he is like for peace and for reconciliation and for the two-state solution and ending this judicial reform and the internal conflicts with the center left in Israel, unity, popular. Look, this is still on the table, but I think that those maybe illusions or wishful thinking is a bit far-fetched. He's still deeply rooted in his right-wing entourage, right-wing coalition. They are his most loyal partners. It would be extremely difficult for him to abandon them and to adopt a completely new direction of reconciliation with the Palestinians. This would require huge, tremendous political steps. I think I don't see this coming. This is just too far away. Maybe. People were saying that he might follow Ariel Sharon 20 years ago with the disengagement plan. Now Netanyahu disengage from the Gaza Strip. He would adopt sort of tough attitude towards the settlers, toward the extreme right wing, and so he would attract the political center in Israel. It is a possible scenario, maybe politically for him this would be good, but I think it's just too big for him now to do that. What do you think about it? I'm hesitating. I don't want to just speak from my heart. I'm trying to analyze things rationally, and I think that this is just a bit too far, for him to do that.
I totally agree. I think it could be a lifeline for him if he really changed course and did a Sharon style move, but it doesn't seem that he's there. I think, as you said, he's too old and too entrenched in his politics right now. And he also burned too many bridges on his way to this right-wing coalition for it to go back right now. Also, I think maybe he has a better read on the Israeli public than I do, and he sees that there's no thirst among Israelis for a two-state solution, for a long-term solution with the Palestinians. So he might be right on that. But,
So maybe the bottom line is that indeed we are going to keep this current situation of no war but no peace. Israel still controlling maybe half of the Gaza Strip, but not the most populated areas. And so there would be here on the northern front some attacks from maybe twice, three times a week with Hamas, and of course no alternative administration in the Gaza Strip. So the sort of more of the same of what we have now. I think it's, and this is my own personal view. I think this would be, if this is the situation, and it is possible that this is what we're going to have at least till the elections here in Israel. It's tragic because, concretely speaking, there are great opportunities on the table now with Syria, with Lebanon, with Saudi Arabia, with other Arab and Muslim countries, and it is possible. Of course, Israel would have to agree to to talk to the Palestinians about a new arrangement, but it is possible for the first time since since many years, but I'm afraid we were going to miss it. I'm not sure it's going to happen.
But we can always hope. We can
not
always
with this
hope.
current government.
Yeah. Let's talk for a second about Donald Trump, because you mentioned him a couple of times, and there is, I think, a very interesting phenomenon. It's like a split screen moment in which in Israel, he's the most popular leader ever. As you said, both sides, the liberals and conservatives, right and left, they all admire him. They're shouting his name in the town square. And on the other hand, over here, he is at least controversial. Definitely, if you'd ask an average American, they wouldn't see him as a president of peace. He's sending troops to the centers of American cities. We're in the middle of a government shutdown right now. There are so many issues. How do you explain that? Is it that Israelis choose to ignore things about Trump, or they don't know about it, or they just think that his achievement overshadows everything else?
Well, Israelis, first of all, I'm not sure that many Israelis really know about what's going on now in the United States, the political situation. They're not very interested in that. Well, you have to understand, in the last 2 years, we were in a terrible war. I mean, and the war was the only thing that really was on our mind. And before the war, we had this internal crisis with the judicial overall, with this political crisis, So Israeli public opinion is concentrated on Israel. It's focused on Israel, okay? Now, with Israel, Trump achieved two things with Israeli public opinion. First of all, he is a very strong supporter of Israel publicly, And I'm not getting into the U.S. political situation. I'm talking from an Israeli point of view. So for most Israelis, Trump is a very good friend of Israel. Okay, that's to put it simply, that's how Israelis feel, that they have a great friend and an ally in Washington. That's the first. Now, the second and the most interesting thing is that because Biden was also a great friend of Israel, but Biden could not force Netanyahu, could not make Netanyahu end the war. Now, the war became very, very unpopular in Israel. In the recent researches and opinion polls before the Trump agreement, you had something like 80% of the people supporting the end of the war and the return of the hostages. Now, by many Israeli progressive people like me, Netanyahu was seen as someone who didn't care much about the hostages and preferred his political survival and the survival of his government over the welfare of the hostages and the welfare of Israeli society. And now this government didn't want to end the war, although the army itself, the chief of staff of the military stated very clearly that there is no point of keep this war and to go on with this war, and the war should be stopped. The military said so. But Netanyahu, because of political considerations, purposes, continued with the war, with this unpopular war. And now, all of a sudden, President Trump succeeded in a matter of maybe weeks, maybe days, to have this regional deal and bring about to the table players like Turkey and Qatar and Egypt and Saudis and all the others, and of course Netanyahu and his government. And Netanyahu was forced to agree, to accept it. So all the demonstrations in Israel for now going on for 2 years, huge demonstrations, unlike the US where you don't have many demonstrations, but we had huge demonstrations in favor of the release of the hostages, ending the war, changing the government. Trump is the only one, the first element who really succeeded in doing this. And so we are grateful. I mean, Israelis are grateful. So first of all, because he is seen as a friend of Israel. And second, because he ended the war. Now, this is something extraordinary. I mean, we were very skeptical at the beginning. We didn't believe. He said that he would end the war in Ukraine, and the war still goes on, etc. But in the Middle East, he did it. Now, of course, there is no peace. We discussed it. It's a difficult situation. It's a dangerous situation. But still, the bombing in Gaza stopped. The hostages, the 20 people came back to their families. Most exciting pictures here. I'm really excited when I talk about it. Very emotional. It's unbelievable. I know some of them. I wrote about some of them. This is something that touches each and every one of us. And yes, we are grateful for President Trump, who stood up for Bibi. He made something that we couldn't do here. And he forced the Israeli government to stop the war. And this is something historical. Now, I hope, this is for the future, I hope this thing would last, because as we mentioned, there is no real treaty. There is no real accord, no settlement, no clear settlements. But at least he made his word, he made his promise for the leaders of the region that the war is really it's the end. He said so many times. So that's what we are counting on. His word, the word of President Trump.
Yeah, it is. I totally agree with you, and it's so interesting just to see the two faces of Donald Trump, the two sides of him, the one seen in Israel, the one seen over here, and hopefully it works. I wanted to go back with you a little to the early days of October 7. In your books, you chronicle, I think, two of the main battlefields, if you could call them that way, the battle over that shelter along the Gaza border and the huge tragedy that was there, and the northern border, the kibbutz of Hanita, which we see in the background there, which is a different war, but the same context and the different front of the same war. I'm wondering what's your main takeaway from these stories? Is this the bravery of the citizens, the resilience of the civil society at a moment in which the institutions disappointed them or weren't there to help them? What do you take away from that?
Well, first of all, there was the sense of an existential threat. This is something now, after 2 years with the big Israeli military and all the Israeli military victories, it seems a bit far-fetched, an existential threat. But on October 7th and the days after, Israelis felt an existential threat for their existence, for the existence of the state of Israel, okay? Both on the south and on the northern fronts. And this is something that really, really shocked many Israelis for a long time. This feeling that all of a sudden, with our big military, we are not safe. We are not safe. We cannot count on the state. We cannot count on the military. We are sort of exposed for terrorist invasions. And this is something that that really shocked the Israeli society. Now, the second thing is the amount of the failure of the failure. Still, the government is refusing to still to create a commission of inquiry. So we don't know the basic facts yet, but it's clear, it's absolutely obvious that there was a huge military and intelligence failure in the days and weeks and months leading to October 7th. And this failure is not yet dealt with, okay? So it's still there. There were no trials. There were no investigations, like formal, general, in-depth investigations, okay? So there is this sense of mistrust. We don't know what happened. Maybe it could happen again. Who knows, because it was not investigated as it should be. Now, I think the third thing is that, and now this is where opinion sort of split. Many people feel that in the coming, few weeks and months after the October 7th attack, the war in the south and, of course, the war in Lebanon were absolutely justified.
Mhm.
But after half a year, after a year and a half, it became political. And many people feel, and they feel very strongly today, that the war was, the October 7th attack with all the shock and the fears and were exploited in order to achieve a political purpose for the government of Netanyahu. And they sort of prolonged the war in an unnecessary way and avoided previous deals and opportunities to end the war and to release the hostages.
Right.
And this is something terrible to say, but many people feel that some hostages were murdered by the Hamas, were killed in those tunnels in Gaza, and they could have been liberated. They could have been with us today, alive. So these three elements, I still very strong in Israeli in our minds. The the existential threat that we felt, the military failure, and the political exploitation of all this, the misuse. And it's not resolved yet. This is still there, and I think to heal, for the Israeli society to heal, to overcome those three painful issues, we need a change, a political change in the country. Because as long as this government is in place, I don't see how the war would be investigated, how things would be amended, changed. We need political change. I hope. Now, of course, this is my own opinion. I hope that we have an early election and that there would be a government change. And so with the new government, a national unity government, a more moderate government, tolerant government, we could start the process of healing that we need so badly in Israel.
Right. We're starting to get a lot of questions, so we'll open it up soon for the audience. But I did want to just go back to the books you've written about this and the research you've done. It seems to me that there is also a message of, I don't know, like almost miraculous resilience of the Israeli society, despite despite all these issues you talked about. Somehow, Israeli society didn't shift into a mode of despair, but rather took over the place where the institutions failed. And you heard that from people in the shelter in the south or in the kibbutzim in the north that were evacuated. Where does that come from?
This gives me really optimism. This is my source of optimism about Israel's future. And this is the tremendous strength of Israeli society. I saw it during my researches in the last 2 years. So many Israeli associations and organizations and NGOs and all sorts of educational and cultural and economical and everything. So many people really did everything they can in order to help other people, not for profit and not for, I don't know, gains or something, just from a sense of solidarity. And this was so necessary at the beginning because the government was sort of paralyzed. I mean, this government is a complete failure in terms of managing things, you know. So Israeli civil society took the place of the government, but it was more than that. It was really coming from the heart. And you saw this all around Israel, you know, so many initiatives and projects were born out of civil action, and this was really heartwarming. You know, this was our source of strength during this long period of time. The government was busy. You know, doing petty things with the opposition, you know, quarreling. The government was not a uniting force in Israel. Israeli society was a uniting force and still is. And I think, yes, you're right, Nathan, it shows the force, nevertheless, of Israeli society. And this is why I believe that with a political change, with election that we need badly because we have to change the atmosphere there. You know, it's really necessary. Then with the good elements that you have in the Israeli society, with the strengths of the Israeli society, with the organizational motivation and everything, I think we can do marvelous things again. And I see this with the kibbutzim, you know, the kibbutz I wrote about, Chanita, which was the symbol of Zionism, you know, almost 80 years ago. It was established as Choma Migdal, you know, it was a sort of protected way of creating kibbutzim at the time on the border. And now, again, it's a symbol of Zionism, of pioneering, you know, with solidarity, with a lot of compassion and tolerance. And so, yes, it's again, this is why I'm optimistic. You know, people ask me, are you optimistic about this? I say yes, because of what I see. All those amazing civil society projects. The government is, you know, well, we said enough, but Israeli civil society is great, and I hope that new people will get into the political to the political field, and we have real change soon.
Maybe you'll even go back to politics. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so this rare moment of optimism. Maybe we'll stop here for a second. And Suzanne, do you want to start going through the questions? I see we have quite a lot here.
Yes, thank you very much, both of you, for that conversation. Real quickly, Nitzan, your books, will they be translated into English? I know right now they're only in Hebrew.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're working on it. The first book, which is called in Hebrew Lechudim, in English Besieged, was translated to French. So you can get it on Amazon, but we're working on an English translation. And also for the second book, which is called The House on the Edge, about the northern communities in Israel. Amazing story, by the way, which was overlooked by the media for so long as well. So I hope in the coming month there would be English versions of both books.
Great. Great. So the war was fought in Gaza, but there is a lot of violence that's taking place in the West Bank. A lot of the prisoners were released into the West Bank. There's a lot of settler violence against Palestinians. Where does all of this play into finding peace within Israel?
This should be part of the deal. Where, it was not mentioned specifically in Trump's plan, but it is obvious that if we talk about the vision of a Palestinian state, that's not for tomorrow, but as a vision of the two-state solution, which was mentioned in the Trump plan, the last point talked about the Palestinian vision of the plan. We're talking about Gaza and the West Bank, of course. So Gaza and the West Bank. Now, it's true that nowadays within the government, there are especially two political parties headed by Smotrich and Ben-Gvir that are taking advantage of the war in the south, and they are trying to change the reality in the West Bank. Many attacks on Palestinians seizing, Palestinian land. There are ongoing conflicts every day, actually, and the situation is bad. Okay, is bad. Now, let me make it clear. There could be no stable situation, no viable situation, no arrangement with the Palestinians that would exclude the West Bank. The West Bank is the heart of the Palestinian entity, and so any future agreement should include both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, there are many settlements in the West Bank. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis live there. There are practical solutions of that. People are not talking anymore about the evacuation of all the Israeli settlements. That's out of the question. That's an old issue. There are new plans about it. Even the Trump plan of his first term talked about the Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. So I think, and the guy who promoted that plan was Jared Kushner. So maybe this Trump administration, the current administration, would get back to this idea of renewing the negotiations with the Palestinians. It's part of the plan. It's part of the idea. But for real negotiation, we need a political change in Israel, because the current government is deeply, sharply against it. Okay, so this is a delicate point here. But and they're trying. They know that they don't have enough time, a lot of time, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and so they're trying to take advantage of the time of their presence in the government in order to change the reality in the West Bank in favor or against the Palestinians. That's the tragic situation we're facing now.
Natan?
Right, I just wanted to add like a word on that, exactly on what Nitzan said now, the fact that the situation isn't static on the ground. The increase in settler violence is creating an untenable situation in many of the areas of the West Bank. The building permits on the E1 corridor, which will basically turn the whole idea of a contiguous Palestinian state impossible. These things are happening already. So not even sure that if you'll wait till after the elections or a few years, these things will be possible.
Mm-hmm. And what about a two-state solution? I mean, everybody here in the United States is vocal about that. Natan, when you were asking a question, you kind of in passing said Israelis don't want a two-state solution. Tell us more about what Israelis are thinking on both sides about a two-state solution.
Well, I think, first of all, it's interesting to note that President Trump was asked about it a few days ago, and he said, I have no opinion about it. Some people like a one-state solution, some people like a two-state solution. So it's not going to come from his end. I think the Israeli right was never interested in a two-state solution. The center left whether because they're disillusioned or too preoccupied with other issues, it's also not a main subject for them anymore. And I think, Nitzan, you probably know better because you're in there doing that. Like, is there real attention? Is there a real Israeli left wing right now that supports a two-state solution?
There is some, but it's true that most of Israelis think nowadays that it's not very realistic. Okay, let's put it this way, not very realistic to talk now, today, about a Palestinian state. It's like theoretical idea somewhere. But as we saw in the last couple of weeks, the idea of the Palestinian state is back on the table. And President Trump met with President Abbas in Sharm el-Sheikh, and he qualified him as the voice of the Palestinian people. He wanted Bibi to come with him to Sharm el-Sheikh and shake Abu Mazen's hand. So Bibi avoided this, saying that this is a holiday. He cannot fly on Sukkot, because of the holiday or something. But I think he was afraid for his coalition, because this would be maybe could have been too much for his right-wing partners. So for now, let me put it this way. Most of the people here do not think that the Palestinian state is a viable, possible, maybe good idea. But with the proper leadership, it could change very fast, like Trump did with the war, or with the plan that with the really idea of a Palestinian state in the plan. That's something that we didn't expect. So things may change. That's my point.
Thank you. Somebody would like to know, post October 7th, with the destruction of Hezbollah, the elimination of many of Hamas leaders, going into Iran, have these actions made any difference in making Israel safer?
Oh, yes. I think that from a military point of view, no doubt that Israel today is much safer than before. Meaning, I live on the really near the Lebanese border, and there is no Hezbollah anymore with their bases along the border, with their missiles threatening us. That's a huge change. So also Hamas as an effective military organization threatening Israel with all sorts of missiles is gone. So I think there is a huge change in Israel's position. And now it's the time to sort of capitalize on that and to have a political accord with our neighbors. For instance, with the Lebanese or the Syrians, there was a change of regime in Syria as well. There is a new leadership over there. The Lebanese government as well. There is a new Lebanese president and government, and they are eager to have arrangements with Israel. And I think it's the time to do it, because now we have the security advantage. And so it's time to move on with diplomacy.
I think you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Is there any expectation or hope that there's a group of Palestinians who are capable of governing in Gaza? And the thought that the longer Gaza's left under Hamas's influence, which we're already seeing, will they be able to really move to a new plan in Gaza?
I think so, definitely. There are already negotiations going on with different Palestinian elements, also within the Gaza Strip. Of course, not Hamas. And of course, the Palestinian Authority, but others as well. If there is a political will in the region, and there is now a political will in the region to back a new Palestinian administration in Gaza, it is possible, okay? But we should not wait too long, because as long as we wait, Hamas is building its power again, getting his people, collecting arms, and that's a danger. So according to the Trump plan, and I know it's being discussed now, there should be a new sort of international force getting into Gaza, disarming Hamas, and creating a new governing entity in the Gaza Strip. But this should happen quickly. If we wait, if the situation stays as it is now, this volatile situation, then we might find ourselves in a new war in the coming future, in the near future. And so we should act fast and really end the war and change the situation in Gaza, not just ending the war, but, having someone in place that can change the situation on the ground.
I also think that, if I can add just something quick on that, I think that what we've seen is just how big a mistake it was to weaken and ignore the Palestinian Authority. Of course, it has its weaknesses. It's not a great democracy. There's corruption there. There's a lack of transparency. All is true, but the fact of the matter is that when Israel and the United States and the West turned their back on the Palestinian Authority, into this vacuum entered Hamas. And you don't want to repeat that mistake again. You have to empower the Palestinian Authority, not because you love it, but just because that is the only representative body right now of the Palestinian people.
As we wrap up, I'm hoping we can squeeze in a couple more questions, if that's okay. Right after October 7th, we heard a lot of stories of the people who lived in the border who helped Gazans. They would take them to hospitals and bring supplies and things like that. Do you see that returning? Are people in Israel trying to help with the needs of some of the Palestinians?
Yeah, I think it's already happening. I heard about this one very interesting initiative. It was the initiative of some Israelis to build an orphanage village in the Gaza Strip for Palestinian kids. It's already there for hundreds of Palestinian kids that were left without any family, and so they are being taken care of in that facility, in that village, which was created by donations and by the initiative of some Israelis with a good heart. Let me tell you this. Now it's almost impossible to imagine those kinds of things because we're in the midst of hostility and hate and war and bloodshed and killing. But we have to remember that in this tiny piece of land, we share it with our Palestinian neighbors, and they hate us and we hate them, fine. But at the end of the day, we have to find a way to live with each other, okay? To live with each other. Now, I think that the best way to ensure it is the two-state solution. But within this diplomatic or military situation, the connections between the people, the direct connections, people to people, family to family, it's not just between Palestinians in Gaza and Israel. In Israel, we have many Palestinian Israelis, Arab citizens of Israel, okay? They are our neighbors. We share life with them, okay? And so for us to have a future in this country, and for us, I mean Israelis and Palestinians, we have to encourage those initiatives in health, education, welfare, culture. We're really very close to each other, and we should not let war and hate make our lives unbearable. And I know personally many Israelis and many Palestinians who wish and act for a future of peace between those two peoples and nations.
Thank you. As we've seen over the last 2 years, we've seen all of the protests and scary incidents of anti-Semitism and stories of Israelis being threatened when they're overseas. Uh, is there a way for Israel to change its image and restore or get rid of this hatred that people are experiencing around the world?
Well, I hope that now that the war is over and things will change, things would change in the region, then those kinds of things that you mentioned would change as well. This is my hope. I feel that personally, sometimes people mix criticism, legitimate criticism about or against the Israeli government with anti-Semitism, but sometimes there are clear signs of anti-Semitism, unfortunately, against Jewish and Israeli people around the world. And this must stop. Now, with the end of the war, this is a major step in order to change this image problem that Israel has. But ending the war is not enough. We have to move forward with implementing the plan and negotiate with our Palestinian neighbors. Once, let me tell you this, I'm sure I'm convinced that once negotiations start with the Palestinians, I mean Israeli-Palestinian direct negotiations, there would be a huge change towards Israel and towards the situation. I mean, people would really appreciate us talking to each other and trying really honestly changing and putting an end to war and advancing peace. Now, when this happens, and there is a chance for this to happen, I think we feel it. Then I think many of those problems worldwide would be gone.
And last,
If I can just add, I
yes,
know
please,
we're running out of time, but just on that same issue, I totally agree with Nitzan that if the dynamics change on the ground and there is a peace process, then Israel's image will change. But I also think that now that the war is ending and the hostage crisis is coming to an end, Israel will also have to do some reckoning on its own behalf on what happened in Gaza and what it did in Gaza. And after Israel finds out with itself what happened there, it will be easier also to regain your moral standing in the world.
Thank you. And lastly, the Jewish community in America rallied around, demanded the return of the hostages. So now what? How can the Jewish community here in the United States be helpful to Israel?
Well, I think that the Jewish community in the United States should support the peace process or the renewal of the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. This is the aim of the current plan, which was agreed upon in Egypt and agreed by Israel as well as by the Palestinians. And so this is the main challenge for us Israelis, and we need your support. I mean, we need the support of the of our good Jewish brothers and sisters in the United States in supporting the efforts for peace. And peace would be the best guarantee for Israel's security and stability and prosperity. And it would be a great relief for you as well, I think. And so now the next phase is supporting peace and saying that the two-state solution or peace for Israel or Israeli-Palestinian peace is not anti-Israeli or something like that. No, on the contrary, we love Israel. I'm Israeli, okay, I live here, but you as our brothers and sisters, you love Israel. Israel is dear to you, and this is why you support peace for Israel, because this is the best thing for Israel. And so let's hope that, and yes, with the involvement of President Trump, I mean, he proved himself as an essential essential element in that situation, that we may achieve at least the renewal of the direct peace negotiations between Israelis, Palestinians, and other elements and countries in the region, notably Syria, Lebanon, and others. So let's hope, we just ended the Chagim, the holidays, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot, and now we are entering a new Jewish year. Let's hope that this year would be a year of peace for Israel and its neighbors. With your help, of course. It's very important.
Well, thank you, Nitzan Horowitz, Natan Guttman. We really, really appreciate today's conversation. We encourage everybody to go to momentmag.com where you can subscribe to the magazine. We will also send out a link to today's recording and ask that everybody share it. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Bye.